So let's talk about the prison at Guantanamo Bay, shall we? Of course, the infamous U.S. detention camp in Cuba where all the torture took place, and in many ways, torture continues to go on to this day. There is currently a massive hunger strike going on by prisoners to protest indefinite detention without a trial, to protest abuse by prison guards, to protest being beaten by prison guards, to protest desecration of their religious materials. Some prisoners have lost between 30, 40, 50 pounds each. Prisoners are collapsing, prisoners are fainting. There was this last week a raid conducted by guards in the middle of the night where they violently moved prisoners from their communal cells to single solitary cells. There was a clash. At least 5 prisoners were wounded in the clash. Rubber bullets were fired. Now, currently, ladies and gentlemen, there are currently 166 prisoners being held at the camp at Guantanamo Bay. 166. Of that 166, ladies and gentlemen, 86 have been cleared for release. That's right. 86. That is over half of the total prisoners. Over half have been cleared for release, and yet they are still being held. They are still being held prisoner in Guantanamo Bay. Well, folks, this last week, the New York Times actually published an op-ed by one of the prisoners who is currently being held at Guantanamo. His name is Samir Naji Al-Hassan Makbel. This op-ed was actually transcribed and relayed by a couple of his lawyers. And I have to tell you, folks, it is as sickening and heartbreaking and as shameful as anything you're going to come across. You really need to read the entire thing, but I'm going to read a good portion of it here. This again is from a New York Times op-ed from a Guantanamo Bay prisoner. Reading from it, quote, "One man here weighs just 77 pounds, another 98. Last thing I knew, I weighed 132, but that was a month ago. I've been on a hunger strike since February 10th and have lost well over 30 pounds. I will not eat until they restore my dignity. I've been detained at Guantanamo for 11 years and 3 months. I've never been charged with any crime. I've never received a trial. I could have been home years ago. No one seriously thinks I am a threat, but I am still here." Just reminding you folks, this man is not alone down there. This man is not alone. Over half of the Guantanamo prisoners have not been charged and have also been cleared for release. Over half, 86 have been cleared and are still being held. Let's reading on from this prisoner, quote, "Last month on March 15th, I was sick in the prison hospital and refused to be fed. A team from the ERF, which is the Extreme Reaction Force, a squad of 8 military police officers in riot gear burst in. They tied my hands and feet to the bed. They forcibly inserted an IV into my hand. I spent 26 hours in this state, tied to the bed. During this time, I was not permitted to go to the toilet. They inserted a catheter, which was painful, degrading, and unnecessary. I was not even permitted to pray. I will never forget the first time they passed the feeding tube up my nose. I can't describe how painful it is to be force-fed this way. As it was thrust in, it made me feel like throwing up. I wanted to vomit, but I couldn't. There was agony in my chest, throat, and stomach. I had never experienced such pain before. I would not wish this cruel punishment on anyone. I am still being force-fed. 2 times a day, they tie me to a chair in my cell. My arms, legs, and head are strapped down. I never know when they will come. Sometimes they come during the night, as late as 11 p.m., when I'm sleeping. There are so many of us on hunger strike now that there aren't enough qualified medical staff members to carry out the force feedings. Nothing is happening at regular intervals. They are feeding people around the clock just to keep up. During one force feeding, the nurse pushed the tube about 18 inches into my stomach, hurting me more than usual because she was doing things so hastily. I called the interpreter to ask the doctor if the procedure was being done correctly or not. It was so painful that I begged them to stop feeding me. The nurse refused to stop feeding me. As they were finishing, some of the, quote, food spilled on my clothes. I asked them to change my clothes, but the guard refused to allow me to hold on to this last shred of my dignity. End quote. I mean, again, just so you know, human rights organizations have actually called force feeding torture. And when you hear it described by someone who has it administered, forced upon him every single solitary day, you can see why it's considered torture and why it's considered unbelievably inhumane. He goes on, quote, reading again from a Guantanamo prisoner from the New York Times, quote, "The only reason I am still here is that President Obama refuses to send any detainees back to Yemen. This makes no sense. I am a human being, not a passport, and I deserve to be treated like one. I do not want to die here, but until President Obama and Yemen's president do something, that is what I risk every day. I will agree to whatever it takes in order to be free. I am now 35. All I want is to see my family again and to start a family of my own. The situation is desperate now. All of the detainees here are suffering deeply. At least 40 people here are on hunger strike. People are fainting with exhaustion every day. I have vomited blood. There is no end in sight to our imprisonment. Denying ourselves food and risking death every day is the choice that we have made. I just hope that because of the pain we are suffering, the eyes of the world will once again look to Guantanamo before it's too late." End quote. And just so you know, he said 40 people are on hunger strike. Human rights estimates and lawyer estimates have that number at around 130, actually. There's probably much more than 40 who are currently on hunger strike. But again, guys, this is a human being who has been imprisoned and held without charges for over 11 years. I want you let's just imagine that concept just for a minute here. Just imagine this. 11 years of your life just taken from you. 11 years of your life just gone. 11 years away from your family. 11 years away from your friends, from your life. Just imagine not knowing if you're ever going to get out. Imagine not knowing if you're ever going to see your family again. Imagine not knowing if you're ever going to be free again. Imagine knowing all of that. And yet knowing still that you have in fact been cleared for release. You have been deemed innocent, and yet you are still being held. And not just that, just imagine the torture that you endure on a daily basis, the indignity you endure on a daily basis. I can't imagine it. I can. I hear the person describing it, but even then, it just I can't even fathom it. A Navy spokesperson told Truthout. This quote's wonderful. A Navy spokesman told Truthout that the hunger strikes were, quote, specifically designed by the prisoners to attract media attention. End friggin' quote. Well, no damn kidding, Navy spokesman. Oh, I thought that these people were starving themselves for fun. They're starving themselves to death as a fun game because it's so fun to starve yourself to death. Such media whores, these prisoners. Oh, look at me. I've had my human rights stripped away. Look at me, I can't eat. Look, here's the deal. President Barack Obama didn't start Guantanamo Bay. He didn't start it. But what he is doing there right now are human rights violations. The detention of these prisoners is in violation of both U.S. and international law. And in fact, Yemen, the Yemeni government has demanded the release of the prisoners, including the one of the op-ed that we just read earlier. The president of Yemen actually said, quote, "We believe that keeping someone in prison for over 10 years without due process is clear-cut tyranny," end quote. And the president of Yemen is 100% right. He is absolutely right. This is tyranny. Clear-cut tyranny. And look, the Obama defenders, I can hear them lining up already. The Obama defenders are saying, well, look, Matt, look. Barack Obama, President Obama, he did try to close Guantanamo Bay. He tried to close he tried to close it, and he was blocked. And look, in fairness, he did try to close Gitmo. He wanted to close Gitmo and then move the prisoners to another facility in Illinois. But here's the deal, folks. Here's the actual deal. To me, and I think and obviously to these prisoners, the location doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I mean, look, I know some people say that Guantanamo is a symbol because of all the torture that happened there, and by closing it, that closing this symbolic torture prison is important. But you know what? Overall, right now, considering where these people are, it does not matter. It doesn't. What matters is that these human beings are being held without due process, and over half of them have been cleared for release. I don't give a damn where they're held. I give a damn that they're held. I give a damn that they're continuing to be held. Innocent people have died at Guantanamo. Innocent people are dying in Guantanamo right now to draw our attention to their plight, starving themselves to death to bring attention to their plight. And the fact is, they are still being held there. And I'm sorry, Obama defenders. That is on Barack Obama. That is Barack Obama's decision. That is Barack Obama's fault. And that is Barack Obama's shame. And it's sadly a shame that our entire country right now is sharing with him. We'll be right back.